What's that say on your beard, on your cup? With great beard comes yes.
That's me rubbing it in.
I know, because things is gone. Hello and welcome to the Glasgow PT podcast, episode 50. Would you believe it's kind of sneaked up on us? I'm joined today, as always, by Scott Simpson.
Hello, how are we doing?
Who seems to be moving about a lot, making noise. Yep, anybody tuning in live, we will be answering some questions as well. So just pop some questions in the box. Me and Scott can see them down the side. So fire your questions in. Doesn't matter what it is, we will answer them. But yeah, mate, this isn't going to be a lot of structure as we discussed before this. It's just going to be us shooting the shit, talking about the podcast, how far it's came, the sort of feedback we've had, how it's affected or helped our business. There's always a lot of people going, oh, how many clients do you get from the podcast? And it's like, well, it wasn't about that. It wasn't about getting clients. It was more, well, we'll discuss the reasons why we did it. Other than, I think I've said it in previous podcasts, mate, about why we started this. I think you'd said to me, didn't you? You'd asked it as a question.
That's right.
Of what was your intentions and stuff. So yeah, Scott had asked me what was the idea of setting up the podcast and what was I hoping to get out of it. So it's probably worth mentioning that now, as we've probably had a lot more listeners since then, new listeners. And the reason for it was just simple. It was the first initial thought I had of it was me and Scott were sitting in the kitchen, which we often do in the mornings. Usually the first one's in the gym. So we grab a quick chat, you know, even if it's a bit of a rant, a bit of a moan, or even just something, bouncing ideas off each other, content-wise or whatever else. And then, you know, conversations later, you just have them and you realise that, I don't know, I'd like to say we're giving away or we're speaking about some topics or discussions that would benefit people. You know, people would, if they were listening in, could benefit them. So, and it's a lot harder to get these kind of points across over just a short Instagram video or a Facebook video. You don't usually catch a lot of people's attentions that way. Whereas if it's a podcast, it's right, people's attention, they're listening, and then you can go a lot more into depth about certain subjects. And that's what we've done, mate. We've literally picked a topic and spoke for 45 minutes to an hour on that specific topic. And yeah, we've got pretty detailed over the past couple of months. As we've got better as speakers, just more confident, because first couple of times was brutal. I think I flung Scott into the deep end, and I listened back to the first episode just briefly. Not only was the audio shocking, right? I'm like, I actually saying it. I'm like, hello, welcome to the Glasgow PT podcast, which is hopefully the first of many in a series. That's what I'm like, mate.
I don't think I spoke for like the first fucking 11 minutes or something. I don't think I actually said it. And I wasn't really, I think at that point it was kind of like, I didn't really know the structure. I wasn't sure. I was sort of just like, see what happens. And I was kind of waiting on it coming to me. And then I realised, you need to speak up at some point here, because it's not going to work that way. Because it was more conversational, but I wasn't sure. But I know I was nervous. I think I told you I tried to kind of try to get out of it, but I wasn't. You know that way where you don't really want to do something, but you know you should. Yeah, it was like that. That's kind of how I felt. But I don't. It's quite a contrast in terms of sitting down to do it now, where I'm like just making a coffee and not thinking too much about it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas back then I was like, oh fucking hell, man! Someone's going to hear me speak.
Aye. You know? No, definitely, I was the same. And it's just that comfort zone thing, isn't it? It's like, you know, there's a lot of PTs out there who are trying to get their message across, so they're starting to do a bit more video and film themselves and getting out of their comfort zone. And the same as this. I mean, just don't think because, well, I mean, we're doing this live today, but most of them have been filmed, pre-recorded. Don't think that it's all right just hiding behind a screen and doing audio, because it's not. It's tough as well, because you want to get a structure to it. We've kind of went from being conversational to trying to be more structured, and I think we've found a good wee mix now, mate. I think we've found a mix between conversational and trying to get a point across, which is, I think, a difficult one. Again, all depends on the listener. Everybody likes different stuff. But yeah, we were cautious, mate, weren't we? The first couple going out, like it was like an hour and a half, some of them, weren't they?
I know. I think you're right about the balance between the two. It's quite hard to strike that balance. It's something that you don't think too much about. There's loads of things I think you don't think too much about when you sort of listen to a podcast generally, because I quite like podcasts. I listen to them quite a bit. And you don't necessarily think about how much planning went into this and how much of it is just off the cuff. You just sort of listen and enjoy it for what it is. But we did, we sort of like, we went between, we need to cut these down a wee bit, to we need to meet up and plan, so we'll just make it conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think it's just it's about striking a balance in it. Do you know what I mean? It can't be too scripted, because then people just like, it's like listening to a news broadcast.
Aye, exactly. That's the thing. And we wanted to get the podcast better. We invested in the podcast rooms, which has been a game changer for us. Ricky and the guys in there. So we've been able to repurpose content due to the fact that we get it filmed in very good quality, but also the audio. You know, nobody wants to listen to a podcast with the audio and you can hear stuff in the background. And, you know, I know we're doing this live today, so that might not be as crisp as normal, but as a listener, you want to hear clear audio. So, mate, we made a few blunders. You know, I told you every other day, like, I bought this for it, mate. High hopes, and you know, sound engineering is like a skill and an art form. I remember buying like, you know, the wee clip-on mics, right? And I don't mean it starts with an L. I don't mean the proper mics. I mean the, you know, the mic, it goes into your phone and then you can talk to it. Very, very, like £8 on Amazon. And I thought, I'll buy 3 of them. And then I'll buy a USB converter to go into the laptop, and that'll work. Just thinking that would work. Do you know what I mean? When actually it's all about the input, and there's only certain inputs that can go in at the same time. And yeah, I mean, I've got a box. You've seen it. I've got a box in that consultation room in work that's just full of rubbish that I tried to use once. So yeah, that's a bit of advice I'd give anybody that's looking to start a podcast is do your research on the equipment. Don't try and cut corners. Get a good solid mic. And then when you're up and running, you know, look into a studio if you're in Glasgow, like the podcast rooms where, I mean, mate, we meet on a Thursday, and then we go over the topic, we bounce ideas off each other, and then Friday we finish work, and then we go into the podcast rooms and shoot the shit, just get chilled. Like Scott said, I think, mate, it's one of the ones we're a lot more relaxed about it now. I've actually said on the podcast, I look forward to that part of the week, mate. It's just a chance for me, you, and potentially one of the other guys just to sit, chill. Ricky sorts everything, looks after us, and we just talk. Then we leave. Then we've got the files in our email, and you know, all this kind of stuff. And but you know, we see the value in doing this. Why do we see the value? Because the feedback we get. You know what I mean? I know you've had a ton of it, and like especially at the start, because people look at it as, right, it's Chris's podcast, and Scott, you know, invested heavily with me in it recently, so it's very much his podcast as well. So I think people message you a lot, mate, thinking it's like as you've probably come out your shell as well, mate. That's one of the things I feel that I've always seen you out your shell, but I think people, I mean, it's not me uncovering a talent here. I just felt that, I've said this to you before, mate, I felt that you were like, more people had to know the advice you were giving it instead of just a one-to-one client. So what kind of feedback have you had, mate, for clients? If they went into detail, if they said to you, I love that bit, if they tell you that as well?
Sometimes I'm surprised by people listening. I don't know why. It's still surprised. I don't know, there's a bit of me somewhere that just is like, a client will say to me, oh, I listened to that. But it was like what you were saying in that podcast. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, like I never even knew that you were listening to the podcast, so you've never mentioned it, or I never expected you to be someone who might listen to these podcasts or something like that. I don't know. So I'm always like a little bit still surprised a little bit when people say that they've kind of listened, and they'll say, oh, it's like you were saying about this, or like you were saying about that. One of the big things that I've kind of taken away from it, and I think it is important, is just the importance of just taking action, because you're right, like it's come quite a long way, like in terms of where it was then to where it is now. Sound quality, feeling a bit more relaxed, a bit more structured. It's just overall better. And that's part of everything. But I've got this thing where I sometimes look at things like it has to be perfect before I start. Like before I do anything, it's always like, it has to be perfect first and then I'll do it. But the reality is sometimes you just need to start doing stuff. You just need to start, and you have to accept it's more of a process. And this has been like a proper process of trying to make these a wee bit better all the time. And Yeah, I kind of had to go against my instincts, I think is what I'm saying a little bit with that, because I was like, oh, I feel underprepared, or I don't know what I'm going to say, or what happens if I get asked a question, I don't know the answer, and then you stop trying to pretend that you're some sort of fucking superhuman, has all the answers for everything, everything has to be spot on all the time, because nothing's like that. Nothing's like that. You've just got to start moving with it. But yeah, the feedback's overwhelmingly been good. Like I said, I'm still endlessly surprised if people like tag me in things or message me about stuff and things like that. But it's nice though. It's nice. It's kind of it sort of gives it purpose, doesn't it? It gives you a reason for doing it.
Aye, that's why mate. You're exactly right. That was my next point. Is we finish on a Friday, 12, 1, 2 o'clock, and it's the week's took its toll usually, and it's like, right, we'll go. And I'll be honest, mate, at the start, due to the fact that I was trying to set up the audio, and it was a bit stressful. You've seen me just before we go live. It's a bit like, you can tell I'm not ready for a laugh, because I'm stressing about trying to get the audio good, trying to make things work. When really it's like anything else, whatever you're shit at, if you've tried, and there's a big yield if you like for what you do, get help, outsource, whatever it is. Because now I go in there a lot more calmer, a lot more relaxed. And like I say, it gets to Friday, and normally you want to be up the road, but I'm ready to go in and talk for an hour and just bounce the stuff off each other. And like you say, mate, the responses, every time I get some good feedback from it, I screenshot it and put it in an album in my phone. And we're now up at like easily 120 photos in there, screenshots, messages from people. Just like you said, mate, when people message you and they're like, "Hi Chris, listen to your podcast. I really like that." But I wondered if, and all they're doing there is just want to know a bit. There's a specific subject they've identified with it and related to it, but they just want a bit more detail in relation to that subject and how it matters for them. And right away, that is a win to me. It's like I say, when you, as a personal trainer, when you put a post up there and someone comments saying spot on or love this, that is your job done. That is literally it. Please never underestimate that. And it's the same as like if you're working in an office job or a service job or whatever it is, and you get an email back just saying spot on, that's great, that's exactly what I was looking for. That's a big tick. And that's what, for me, the podcast does every week. And like you say, it's one of those things that you're quite surprised sometimes when people say it. And it reaffirms my faith when someone says, when we go really into town with a subject, like one of the biggest ones, mate, was the never-ending calorie deficit.
All right.
Which people have came back and like, oh man, that's so me. Like, I'm always feel like I'm dieting. What do you suggest? Should I take a diet break? And I'm like, I think we filmed that about 7 weeks ago. Really? All right. Okay, cool. And that's just catching up, and it's just ongoing content for people to benefit from. And I even sometimes refer clients to there if it's a really good topic we've covered in depth. Refer them to there, get the earphones in and get a real in-depth answer instead of and then when they come back, I can give them the sort of tailored version of theirs. But it just means the client learns as well, and and they've got a go-to source every time that you're putting something out there.
I think this is the big thing about these types of like podcasts and stuff like that, is like it's a kind of medium where you can really get into things in more detail. You can apply more context. It's more of a long form conversation, because so much of what you do as a personal trainer, as a coach in fitness, the reality is that if someone asks you a very general question, the answer is 9 times out of 10, it sort of depends. And then you have to apply some context to the answer, because everyone's different. Everyone has a different lifestyle. People have different goals. People have different likes and dislikes. People have different stresses. People have different limitations. And these kind of things, it's quite hard to just put them into like even just a post on social media. It's quite hard to get really into the depths of the details and really apply some context and stuff like that. And these types of conversations are just kind of quite good in that way. It sort of allows you to like really kind of get into the depths of what you mean by certain things and what certain things mean. And I think that's important for people, because I think fitness is one of those things that's fell hostage to this. A lot of it's quite black and white. It's like, oh, should I do this or not? And like, it's like, well, it depends. And it depends. And these, having a podcast, it's like, or being able to kind of talk about these things in that sort of detail, I think hopefully it kind of gives people a little bit more context and what we mean when we say it depends, and why saying it depends is important, and why it depends on this detail or that detail, and hopefully people are able to kind of take like proper solutions from that, because I think that people sometimes get into that way of thinking where it's like, well, what's the right answer here? Am I allowed to have carbs after 6 o'clock at night or not? Like, and it's like, well, you can if you want. You might find it works for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, you could just go into things in a little bit more depth. I think it's good that way. I think it's really good to get into proper detail with stuff.
Aye, because you look at that from a client and a trainer point of view. It depends is not what the client wants to hear. So I think over time, sometimes trainers they dabble around it so that they can please people with that when the next time they get asked that question. So yeah, mate, it's spot on. We can give the short answer. It depends on this. I mean, if it's a one-to-one client, you tell them exactly what. But when it comes to people just seeking general advice, a lot can be taken away. I mean, I mentioned this in a podcast yesterday I was appeared on, is like, podcasts are like gold dust, mate. You're an avid podcast. It's free information, right? Literally, you can do the housework, you can do the dishes, you can sit and chill, you can be on your phone. It is like gold dust summit, and it's some really, really intelligent people that are putting it out there. TED Talks, other fitness professionals who are really specialize in certain fields, and it's all free. It's no social media posts are obviously free as well, but they're busy. There's a lot going on, and you can only do so much, and the production value is harder to get across. But podcasts, some of the best guys in any industry are on podcasts, and I can't underestimate. That's kind of one of the other reasons as well, mate. There's been a big rise in podcasts in the last couple of years, so it was like, right, let's get in about that. I feel that. We talk quite a lot, so it's like, right, let's just get a mic in front of us. And now we've got 50 episodes of. I can't think of a subject we've missed, mate. We've put our heads together, and there's no many we've missed. And the feedback's always been spot on in terms of the subjects we're talking about. So until that doesn't happen, we'll change it. But I think me and Scott know exactly our line of work. We know where our boundaries lie in terms of what we advise as well.
I think it was interesting when we kind of sat down and we kind of like tried to put them in categories. I think we had like the ones where we'd kind of mostly touched on diet, the ones where we'd mostly touched on exercise, the ones where we'd mostly touched on mindset. And I think it's quite interesting on a few levels. One, to see how these things overlap, to see how it's quite sometimes hard to categorize some things as just being in one of those categories. The other is they all kind of like are interlinked and intertwined and overlap each other a little bit. I think we'd kind of said that, I think maybe you'd pointed it out, that the mindset ones, anything that kind of touches on mindset seems to be quite popular, doesn't it? It seems to kind of resonate with people quite a lot. Why do you think that is?
Well, mate, mental health's a big thing now. Everybody's starting to become a lot more aware of the importance of mental health. We're no longer just letting things dictate our way, and sometimes in some cases just letting their mind or like anything that goes on in their life just crowd them and bury them down. I think people are starting to be more aware of, right, that isn't this factor or that factor, it's actually just how you react to it. So the mental health thing and how you react to situations and the positive mental attitude and, positivity and all that kind of stuff has just took a big rise now, which is great. So it's an area that, mate, that I'm trying to read books on it and try and get a bit better of, because I understand people. I'm intuitive. I can react to them, but it's articulating how I feel that. It's sometimes hard for me to get that across. So the biggest ones with mindset, mate, as we spoke about when we ripped down all the subjects that were covered, those are the ones that were getting the most shares, the most relatability. Everybody can work on their mindset. Not everybody can relate to exercise, weight training, carbs after 6 p.m., these gym myths, because not everybody goes to the gym. Whereas mindset can be adapted by everyone. Whether you're a teenager, whether you're older or younger, it's all the same. And I think we understand now that, especially when it comes to nutrition, mindset has a massive part to play, more so than training. Mindset with training is a bit like, do you want to go to the gym? How's your motivation, discipline, all these factors? But ultimately, nutrition is one of those ones where, right, where's your mental head at when it comes to nutrition? So yeah, that's why I think, mate. I think it broadens the market a bit. Everybody's starting to realise that there's some crazy, upsetting statistics that have came out about mental health, and especially male mental health. So yeah, mate, I just think more people can relate out with just the gym-based audience. So yeah, that's why I would say, mate. What would you say is? Do you remember your favourite episode? Do you remember an episode where you just came off it and you just went, "I fucking smashed that there"?
Do you know? It was probably. I don't know. I don't know why this one sticks in my mind. It could just be because we've just been talking about mindset. I was thinking back to the one we did about motivation. I found that to be. It was one that I quite enjoyed talking about. I think that, but that's just me personally. Like, motivation's always fascinated me. I'm so interested in what motivates people, and I've always been that way. And I think one of the interesting things about it as well is I think I've changed my mind on it quite a lot. I think that I was like anybody, or I was like a lot of people, I think, years ago, when I used to look at people who'd achieved certain things, and I used to conclude quite quickly, oh, they're more motivated than me. That's the problem. I don't have their levels of motivation. And I think that's really disempowering. And I think a lot of people do feel that way. A lot of people feel as though, I just don't have the motivation. And that's the difference. And then when you really start to look into it, you start to realize that the difference between someone who achieves a level of success, if you've got two people who have a goal and they're both working towards it and one of them achieves a greater level of success than the other, it's really because one person's more motivated than the other. There's normally other factors in play, and normally actually a lot of those factors as they relate to motivation is actually how do you minimize the need for motivation, rather than sort of thinking, how do you maximize motivation? Like, maximizing motivation is part of it. I think there's two main types of motivation. One is your kind of external motivators, and one of them is internal. And I think that if you can really get in touch with like an intrinsic motivation, then that's huge. But I think that a lot of the kind of things that I've learned about motivation have been centered around how do you not rely on it? Because if you do rely on it too much, and I think this is the reason why I quite like talking about it and I find it interesting, is because I think that a lot of people do think it's the missing piece of the puzzle, or they do rely on it too much, where their entire progress is dictated on whether or not they feel motivated that day. And I think that that's one of the big things that's kind of that holds a lot of people back. So anyway, it's something I've changed my mind on, and I've sort of like developed a little bit, and it really interests me. So I think from that perspective, when we spoke about motivation, and a lot of the conversation we quite quickly realized was centered around how do you get to a place where you're not really too reliant on it. Do you know what I mean? Like that was quite, I found that one really interesting, but that's just because it's something that I've thought about a lot, and has always been something that
you probably delve deeper into it.
What were you?
Mate, I don't know. I think the motivation thing, just before I say, is I can't remember the last time I sat there and went, I feel motivated. Do you know what I mean? I feel like I don't identify it. I mean, I think that the only time I question motivation is when I don't have it, or I don't appear to have it. And that probably only ever really comes when it comes to training. But I think, like you said, there's a bigger picture to be had here. There's how did you structure your day? Are you now here ready to train, but you're not motivated because of the actions you did 4 hours before that? I.e., did you sit for 4 hours on your laptop or your computer doing things that you enjoy, or things that bring you instant gratification, and then you're seeking to train? So yeah, mate, I don't think you've probably never heard me say the words, I'm really motivated today. And I mean that even in a work sense. I mean, I just get tired, but maybe that's a way that maybe I'm not too reliant on motivation. Maybe that's
what I was going to say. It won't be a necessity for you to do what you need to do, and you're on a day-to-day basis. It's not like, I don't feel motivated today, therefore that won't get done, or I feel really motivated today, therefore it will get done. I think that's the big thing about motivation, isn't it? I suppose it's I sometimes think motivation gets confused with discipline. I think that sometimes people think that they're the same thing, and they're not. Motivation, everyone, I think, probably could say at some point or another, I felt massively motivated. The same way that I think everybody can say at some point or another they felt massively demotivated. And maybe you could argue that some people maybe have a different set point, but I think we pretty much flows. Some days you're motivated, some days you're not. Some days you're motivated, some days you're not. And I think that the over-reliance on it is a problem. And I think sometimes what people mean when they say motivation is that they lack discipline. Now, I think that is a different thing, but I think the good thing to know about discipline is it's a skill. And, you can develop it. And I think by sort of voluntarily taking on challenges, like discipline is something that you can build on and work on and improve, but it's not the same as motivation. Like discipline can kind of kick in on the days where you can't really be arsed and you just sort of need to get it done. And I do think discipline is something that some people have to a greater degree than others, but I don't think they've just naturally given it. I think it's something that they've had to work on and develop. So yeah, I know what you mean. You're probably just in a position where you don't rely on it, therefore it doesn't necessarily resonate with you too much as a variable that you need to think about.
So then, yeah, mate, I think that's where people need to retrain the word discipline. I feel they need to go and listen to a few podcasts, and I'm sure there's a ton out there that motivation versus discipline. It's now a big thing because psychologists and leading minds in the industry have really delved deeper into, and that's probably why you've took an interest. But discipline isn't, people think of discipline, they think of like a school teacher disciplining a pupil. Discipline is totally different. It's an art form. It's specific to your, you always hear that word where people is like, yeah, that's their discipline. So it's an actual thing. It's not just being strict. I think that's what people think discipline is.
Yeah.
It's just exercising your routine, your habits and your lifestyle, and exercising discipline with it. Mate, I'm going to ask you this question, and I can answer a wee bit more if need be. So Gavin has asked, I'm struggling with motivation at the moment, even with all the time to go and do a run. Any tips on how to get out for the first time? It's been ages.
Yeah, there's probably a few things that I would recommend. So I think the first thing to do is that you need to plan it in. I think you actually need to take the step where you actually have a diary or a to-do list or whatever it is, and structure your day in such a way that you actually put it in there. So not just on, I'll probably go for a run this week. You break it down, you say, right, okay, on Monday, I'm going to go for that first run. I'm going to get up in the morning, I'm going to get up at this time, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and I'm going to go out for a run at such a time. And I think that when you give it, it's called an implementation intention. When you actually put it in a diary, on a day, at a time, at a place, here's where I'm going to run, you put real intention behind it. And I think that having that, what's called an implementation intention, can be a huge thing in terms of especially getting started, because it's so easy just to put it off because it's in no way part of your routine yet. So you have to put some intention behind it. You have to put some structure behind it. You have to really plan it in to your day. I think that would probably be the main thing that I would recommend. When are you going to do it? What day are you going to do it? What time are you going to do it? Where are you going to go? Like actually put these things in place, and then after that, that's where little bits of discipline and things like that kick in. But I think that could be a really important start point for people.
Yeah, mate. I think as well, Gavin, you've got to realise that there's a reason that you probably run. You probably enjoy it. You probably love the feeling after it. So just try and think and remember back to when you enjoy it. It's like there's a lot of things that it's just a hurdle you're hitting. It's just a mind block that you've hit that once you start, you'll get back to it. Don't think that you're a million miles away. Don't think that you used to run a 5K in sub 20 minutes. So, you're going to be a million miles away from that, because you're just going to keep putting it off. Accept the fact that you're not going to be near that time. But remember the feeling that you get after a run. Usually the endorphins are high. People who run love running. You ever seen that episode of Family Guy when Brian starts running, like, and turns into a pure douchebag like that? He gets the runner's high. He loves running, and that's just a wee funny twist and play on the fact that runners are like a cult and they love it. Mm-hmm. So remember that feeling, mate. You dig through the archives of old tunes that motivate you. If it's old playlists that you used to use, podcasts, whatever it is, like Scott said, set it in stone. Make it a non-negotiable. Clear your day, get your playlist ready, whatever motivates you, and just take that first step. Never mind the time. Don't put pressure on how quick you're doing it. But trust me, see once you do it that one time, it'll just break the mold. Because it's the same as when people try and get back to the gym. They think, oh, I'm not going to be able to go 5 times a week. I'm not going to be able to lift as much as I used to lift. And all those, they think about all that stuff, so that ends up forcing them not even try or not even get in there. But yeah, it's like joining the gym again in January after you've had some time off. Once you go there once, you start building up momentum. So like Scott said, plan it in place, make it a priority, and just try and remember. I guess what I'm trying to say is remember the why. The why is that you enjoy running. So try and remember that why. And just get an old playlist on. Do stuff that you used to do that made you motivated in the past. I think a lot of people forget that, and I always mention it in podcasts, is people don't use data to help them. So if you were to look back on old running times and old, I don't know, messages between whoever you're used to run with or talk about it to, and read back and go, oh, that's what I used to do. You know, you might say that you used to get up before breakfast and go so that you didn't feel sluggish, or retrace your steps of a successful time when you used to run. And it might trigger something in your mind. So yeah.
I think that was the kind of good thing there was obviously like what I was saying before about the intrinsic motivation, like kind of having a strong why for doing anything is a big thing. Like I was saying, a lot of the conversations that I'll probably have if I'm kind of talking to the guys and girls that I work with around motivation is normally it's like, right, okay, how do we kind of overcome lack of motivation more than how do we make sure you're motivated as anything every single day? It's very rarely about that. But I do think that one thing that you can do to try and maximize motivation potential is to have a strong why. And if it's because I want to get back into it because I know that I really used to enjoy it and I just know that if I get a few runs under my belt, I'll get that feeling back and all the rest of it, then it's important to be aware of that, to acknowledge it, and then obviously to use that to your advantage, because that intrinsic motivation is huge. It's huge, and use that as a kind of driver to kind of get you over that first initial hurdle of just getting out there and getting it done.
Yep. Awesome, mate. Got a few questions earlier on my Instagram. Let's answer a few here, and I can just sort of divert the people through there. So we had, I train all year round, and year in, year out, when I go on holiday and I still train, but I seem to, but it's like, it's a two-worded question, so it's a bit. I train all year round, year in, year out, but then when I go on holiday, I go ripped, and then I come home fat. Lol. Can't seem to work out why I do this. So I'll go first with this one, mate. The obvious things there are you're probably over restricting. You might be over restricting, you might not be, but bear in mind if you're coming back fat. In fact, Scott, I want you to answer this part. You've got a good example with this where you've covered before about people's mind towards it. You know, you've said before about when they come back for holiday and they think of the holiday and they overeat on holiday and then they come back. Do you remember?
I don't know. Maybe one of the big things I think when it comes to this is obviously like, I think you need to separate two things here. I think you need to separate how you feel about something in general and what is actually happening. Do you know what I mean? I think that often the way in which we feel towards things, that feeling that you have maybe when you've dieted for a holiday and that's the best you're going to feel in terms of maybe like being lean, let's say. I don't want to kind of attach too much emphasis to that, but let's say it's the leanest you're going to be that year, for example, and you're feeling really good about it. And then you obviously go on holiday and maybe it's like an all-inclusive thing where you lie by the pool and you're boozing throughout a lot of the day and there's buffets and stuff like that, all that good stuff. And then you come back and you obviously don't feel that way anymore. Now, let's say you go for 2 weeks and stuff like that. Is there potential that you've gained some body fat? It's more than likely that you've gained some body fat. There's no point in pretending that's not the case. You'll have a lot of water retention, as well as another part of it. That's why you'll typically see people who, if they do go on those types of holidays and then they come back, that weight gain will actually drop off quite quickly. It's because like potentially the majority of it might not have been body fat anyway. So I think sometimes the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of this isn't grounded in necessarily that you've gained a ton of body fat. You probably have gained some, but it's more just that kind of feeling. You've kind of had that build up towards the holiday. You were feeling really good about what you'd achieved, feeling really maybe leaner, feeling good about yourself. And then you go and then you kind of feel like you've obviously went and enjoyed it and you've come back and you've lost that feeling a little bit. I'd say that's pretty normal, but a lot of it is just a feeling, and less of it is about, you know, actually gains in body fat or anything like that. I think that's the kind of big point I would make here. I think that it's the other thing I would say in relation to that is it's probably good to kind of think about, right, okay, it could be worthwhile setting yourself some goals when you get back. And I don't mean like body composition based, but like something that gets you back in the gym and gets you back into a healthy routine and stuff like that. So yeah, those would be the main things I would kind of say about it. I think it's normal to feel that way, but it's probably not as bad as you think it is. And it's just about kind of like getting back into the gym and exercising. We spoke about why you do things. It'll help you feel a bit better about the situation as well. But I think it's quite a normal thing.
Yeah, perfectly normal. It's just obviously sad when you look back at photos of your final, you know, your first day on the beach, and then compare it to you sitting back in the house on a Sunday eating a Chinese and going, "Oh, that's the holiday over." I think a wee bit of experience will come. The more you do diets, the more you come back from holidays. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say that you should pick your battles with a buffet because we all go crazy for 2 or 3 days, and then I have done a few diets in my time, and I'm very, obviously being a personal trainer, I'm very aware of how I feel about my body sometimes. So I will pick my battles. I hate feeling bloated and uncomfortable, so I'll go out for a bit. The reason I said restrictive at the start of that is because if you're over restrictive and as soon as you get off that plane, you are catching up for weeks and weeks of months of what your body's been wanting to do, and that is binge. So being aware that wherever you are in your diet phase or your diet age, shall we call it, so if it's your first diet and you go super restrictive, and then because you want to be a certain way, then you come back from holiday, then you feel like you're back to square one. Understand that perhaps maybe your goal was too far away anyway, and that you're never going to be the finished article after one diet. So, you know, you should have 2, 3, 4, and then realise that it takes time. And I think what Scott said there as well is crucial, and it's very difficult. And I've mentioned this on previous podcasts before, but I used to keep a client session in the bag before they left, just so that I could get them back in and be like, right, you're back for your holiday. I know you feel shit. I know you feel bloated, but X, Y, Z, like Scott said, it is just more water weight, stress from the plane. You've went from one extreme to another. It's all good. Let's realign your goals. Let's use this time. You know, make a joke that the pastries are, you know, are going to fuel you for your big lifts this week. I love, you know, just, you know, this is the sort of thing that you can be saying. And this is a male that's asked this question. So just, you know, get back to the gym. Don't go all in, balls to the wall if you've been on a 2-week holiday, because the DOMs will be real. But bear in mind that use that as a sort of buffer week. You know, take it easy, get a ton of steps in, lose some water weight, because trust me, you know, why anybody would step on the scale when they come back from holiday is beyond me. But people do it. It's bonkers. So just as soon as you get off that plane, remember that you are no longer chasing body composition goals at this time. You need a diet break. You need some time to get to maintenance. And then what's next? Realign. Let's get strong. Let's just decide what's happening. So yeah, I think that there's a few sides to that coin, and it's been too big, because if you're coming back and then continuing to eat, 2 weeks holidays will do that to you. But I would say that potentially before you left, you were being too restrictive. So yeah, consider that. The next time you go on holiday, you'll know this now. We've identified it. So don't, again, it's like I always say, use data. Don't just, like Scott says, identify that when you come back, you're a fat bastard and you don't know, and you just end up ruining all your progress. Use the data. Go, right, Chris just said this, Scott just said this. Instead of thinking of an 8-week diet, then you go on holiday for 2 weeks, think of a 2-week rebound diet, a 2-week maintenance phase, or water reduction phase, where you just move your body again and get some water weight off. I think that's some good pointers to take.
I think one other thing that I would maybe say is that a lot of the time, I think that when people, I'm all for short-term goals. I think that they sometimes, not often, but I think there is an element of them that sometimes gets demonized. I can understand why that happens, because there is a lot of like fads out there that kind of target really big changes in a really short space of time, and they're maybe not doing things in a particularly healthy way. I think it's always so important with any short-term goal. This is what I tell every client. You've got to have one eye on the long term. you have to, like, you just can't completely neglect it. It's okay doing things in the short term. It's okay having short-term goals. It's okay wanting to get as lean as you possibly can for a holiday or whatever. That's fine, as long as you've got one eye on the long term, as long as it's kind of grounded in sort of a generally healthy, productive outlook on everything, a healthy, productive routine, a healthy, productive approach towards diet, a healthy, productive approach towards exercise, because that's what you'll fall back on when you come back from the holiday. You'll go back to those old routines when the external motivator of the holiday is not there anymore. You'll fall back on like the kind of routines and habits and behaviors that you spend the time trying to build up. And I think these things actually can be built up within short-term goals. I think that's the difference between doing it properly in a healthy way and the difference between doing it in a kind of unhealthy way, is that there's no afterthought for the long term. Do you know what I mean? So I think that it's important to always have one eye in the long term, and to realize that obviously once you kind of diet for a holiday and you go on a holiday and you come back, it's like I always say to people, like, there's always life after the after picture. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't just stop. It's life goes on, and you've maybe set new goals, and you've maybe got other things you want to try and achieve. You maybe change your focus a little bit, but hopefully it should be grounded in kind of solid routine, healthy behaviors, healthy habits.
Yeah, it's probably a bit irresponsible just thinking about the after picture being that, especially given that you're not going to die tomorrow. So the after picture can't be the final after picture. And it's always refreshing when a client or someone is like, cannot wait to make this after picture my next before picture. It's always refreshing to hear. So yeah, mate, there's not much more questions coming in. Got a few on my phone, but I'll answer them directly to the people. The time's got on a wee bit. So anything else you want to add, mate?
No, all good. Yeah, no, it was 50 episodes is quite mental, isn't it? It doesn't feel like 50, like it's just flew in. How long, when did we actually start this?
Couldn't even say, mate. The first one was, I don't even know if it will say on this when the first ever one was, the date. I don't know if it usually gives the date. 8th of May, 2019.
Right, okay. What are we on the now?
April. So it's almost been a year. 3 weeks it'll be a year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's no bad gone, mate. That is what. Well, by the time a year comes, that's been one a week consistently for 52 weeks.
What do you want to do for the year anniversary? You want to get smashed and do one of these?
I'm already smashed for 50, mate. This is Irish. Mate, we'll do something special. I'm sure we'll be back in the podcast rooms at that point. I'm sure we can get some banners behind us on the green screen or something like that, or a few Peronis, no doubt. Mm-hmm. Mate, here's to another 50 more. And big thank you to all the listeners, everybody who shares this stuff. Hopefully this podcast gave you an understanding of why we started it, and also a few other nuggets that will help you with your fat loss journey, and if you want to set a podcast up as well. But here's to another 50 more, as always. Thanks to Scott for coming on.
Cheers.
And over the next couple of weeks, we will be coming up with more and more stuff for you. We will be ready for when this lockdown is lifted to ensure that you are getting ready for holidays and everything else to get on with your year and get your health back to an optimal stage. We will be ready to deliver the content. We will, for the next couple of weeks as well, we will be going live on Facebook again. So we will make it a lot more Q&A based. So if you just get your questions in, even if we're talking about something else, we'll notice the questions and we'll just fire them in and answer them. Again, guys, listen, if you're struggling with something, there is no better free content out there than someone answering your question directly to you. You can't get that anywhere else. It takes forever. So yeah, get it in. But yeah, thanks for listening. If you could always just share this, get it out there, because it's, well, the reason you do that is the reason we keep showing up. And yeah, Scott, have a good day, mate. I'll speak to you soon.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.